Thank you very much, Mags, and thank you for the complimentary comments that you made earlier. I really appreciate that. And I have to say the same about Mags. Mags has always been there partnering in the South in terms of this kind of ongoing struggle that we have. And she is a wonderful advocate and you know, combative trade union colleague in terms of Palestinian solidarity. I just want to pick up quickly on some of the things from yesterday that I didn't get a chance to talk about, and I just want to refer to them in passing. Again, the issue of our apartheid. We passed, it came from Derry Trades Council, Daisy sitting up there, I think she is, from Derry Trades Council proposed the motion. It came from TUFP, and it was about, we picked up on the ESCA, the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia report. Now, the report has been shelved, but it still stands as a commissioned report, and the findings of the report are still valid. And what we thought was that we shouldn't let that report go, just as we didn't think that the Russell Tribunal and the 4 years of inquiry of the Russell Tribunal should go. So we've had a pamphlet out there on the Russell Tribunal. But we thought that we should put a basis of a motion to Irish Congress using the report. The report says that it establishes on the basis of scholarly inquiry and overwhelming evidence that Israel is guilty of the crime of apartheid. And in the occupied territories, it refers to aggravated apartheid. Now, the recommendations of the report are extreme because it's not just a report. Mostly what happens with the UN and the EU is that they go out and they investigate and they register, if you like, infringes of international law and so on. What this report is very, very good about are its recommendations, very practical recommendations, and we got them into the ICTU motion. First of all, the report says that national governments themselves should be supporting BDS. That's quite if you like, a very, very powerful kind of demand that national governments who are obliged under international law to take action should be, by part of their legal kind of obligations, be implementing BDS. It also said, our motion also said that called upon ICTU to distribute the report to all the affiliates, to ask that they distribute it to all their members, that ICTU respond to the recommendation of the report, that it writes to the Human Rights Council, making a complaint about Israel's apartheid practices, that ICTU should intensify its BDS actions and in terms of the 2007 motion, and also should seek a meeting with the Irish government. The INTO motion that was passed recently also refers to that report. So we're trying to do our best here to highlight the fact that this report has got extreme relevance and will have probably for decades to come. The other thing I wanted to mention, I'm just going to mention it in passing, one of the things that we have been involved in, there was a question from the audience yesterday about joining together, bringing people together to work together. And one of the best ways in which that can happen is through people of faith and broader civil society responding to the call of Palestinian Christians. During apartheid South Africa, they put out a call called Kairos South Africa, Kairos in this moment of crisis, calling on the world community to take action and BDS action against apartheid South Africa. In 2009, the Christian community, all the Christian leaders in Palestine did the same thing. So TFP has been, in many ways, instrumental in building on the very good work that Sadaka has done and pulling together people of faith to form Kairos Ireland. A lot of work has gone into that. I don't know if John Parkin, Reverend John Parkin is still here, but he's come up with a fantastic draft for us, and we're going to be publicising and launching that shortly. But keep an eye on that, please. I mentioned yesterday about the European Trade Union Campaign Initiative for Justice in Palestine. For those who weren't here, it's the first time that we have brought together the European trade unions outside of the formal structures to mobilise against a situation of gross kind of oppression of people. It didn't happen in Vietnam or apartheid South Africa. Where are my notes in this? One of the things that we agreed to do for our second conference, which is taking place next weekend, is to pick up on the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the ILO's goals, which is on decent work. the UN is applying its sustainable development goals to all the countries that are members of the UN, and the ILO in particular is picking up on one of the sustainable development goals, which is decent work. So what we're saying to all the organisations involved in this, and the trade union movement internationally is heavily involved in the promotion of decent work, we're saying, what about decent work for Palestinians? Yeah, Palestinians are denied their human rights, and human rights are workers' rights. You can't have workers' rights unless you have human rights. So we are making a big emphasis on that, and we have commissioned a report from Verset University as well, and we have lawyers linked in with the ECCP who are going to be working with us to highlight how European complicity is undermining decent work for Palestinians. So I want you to keep an eye on that as well. That's a very important development. I want to... it's a very short amount of time here, so I'm trying to cover quite a lot. But one of the ways in which you can find out about the condition of workers in Palestine is by accessing our reports that are sitting out there on the stall. I'm going to read from one of them. Because what we have done as working with our Norwegian colleagues, we have tried to penetrate through to understand what is happening within the Palestinian trade union movement. It's very complex. The more you go out, the more you find it difficult to understand. There are something like 6 or 7, I think it's more like 7 Jamal would know, different trade union federations, and the federations cover a lot of different overlapping kind of disciplines. How do we work with them? And one of the big problems is that only one of those federations is recognised internationally in the European Trade Union Congress and in the International Trade Union Congress. And that federation is one that is linked to FATA and to the PA. It's not simply a close ally, because there are contradictions there, and the PGFTU can be very critical of the PA and involved in some mobilisations against it. But fundamentally, it is linked party-wise to FATA and the Palestinian Authority. And so it doesn't adequately represent the struggles, particularly the massive mobilisations that have taken place in recent years by Palestinian workers against the ravages of neoliberal capitalism and the economic transformations that the PA is implementing, aided by World Finance Organization, the World, like the World Bank and the IMF. The devastation that is happening across the MENA countries, the Middle East and North Africa, in terms of the massive, if you like, neoliberal changes, and we're aware of that very much in this country too. It's causing a huge growth in poverty. There are children in parts of North Africa are now suffering from stunted growth because of these transformations. The same thing is applying in Palestine. And sections of the workers' movement and some of the trade union confederations are mobilizing against that. We have to understand that. So listen, folks, it's not a simple binary, Israel-Palestine, Israel bad, Palestine good. And it's not a simple binary in terms of Palestine between the Palestinian Authority government and the Palestinian trade unions, because there are contradictions within the Palestinian trade union movement itself. And we will hear more about that from Jamal. How am I doing for time here? I've got 5 minutes. Okay. One of the, I think it would be important to just access this report a bit. We wanted to make a link with and our Norwegian colleagues facilitated this for us, with the meeting the Palestinian New Unions, the Palestinian Federation of New Unions, one of the new federations that emerged because they weren't happy with the lack of representation from the major federation, the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions. And what we heard about the emergence of that union was that they were working in Tulkarm, fundamentally, but other parts of the West Bank as well. But in Tulkarm, there were workers in these industrial zones, and the industrial zones were set up. They were kind of halfway between Israel and halfway between the Palestinian Authority area. It's like a no man's land, surrounded by the wall, so it's locked in. And it's where they have the most toxic, the most kind of hazardous kind of production of chemicals and weed killers and products like that actually they didn't want to have in Israel because it was causing too many health hazards. So they moved those kinds of factories into Tulkarm. And there were dreadful conditions for the workers. The company was Israeli owned, but it was in these industrial zones. And these workers were dying. They were developing cancers. They were being killed by fumes. 2 workers, I think, went on fire and died. The health and safety was appalling. And because of the lack of representation by the Palestinian General Federation of Trade Unions, PGFTU, the workers got together and they went on strike. And they weren't organized as a union, but they went on strike. And they mobilized the community. They worked with the people who they were paying rent to. They worked with the local retailers and the shops who all gave them credit in order to sustain their strike. And they maintained that for, I don't know, 6 months, Jim, was it? 6 months, and they won the strike. And they caused, they kind of offered a model to other workers in other parts of the West Bank, and they have set up the Palestinian Federation of New Unions. It's not the only independent federation. The General Federation of Independent Unions is another, if like, independent federation, doing marvelous work, particularly in tackling a repressive social security law, which I'll try to mention. The new unions were, when we met with them in Tulkarm, and I would ask people to get involved with us and come out and meet these workers. Particularly praised us for, in our union in Unison, for breaking off relations with the Histadrut. The problem that one of the problems that they have with Histadrut, apart from the fact that Histadrut created the Israeli state, Ben Gurion was its first leader. They talked about the really difficult issue of Palestinian workers going into to Israel, queuing up. Now, this is Palestinian workers living in the West Bank. They queue up from before dawn. We arrived there at 3:30 in the morning, I think it was, and they'd been queuing for hours. Queue up from before dawn, waiting for hours to try to get through these cages, these barriers, and literally cages, to work in Israel. And we'll see something on this, about this on the film. I have a short film. I have to finish a film of 1 minute. And then they go into Israel. When they go into Israel, unlike Israeli workers, they're forced, every one of them is forced to pay dues to the Histadrut, the Israeli trade union. Israeli workers themselves are not forced to join the Histadrut, but these Palestinian workers are. And so those dues, over many, many decades, that's DUES, over many, many decades, have been deducted from the wages of the Palestinian workers. They have also suffered deductions, massive deductions, to pay for social security in Israel. They don't get any social security. They don't get any health benefits. They don't get any pensions from Israel. But this money has been taken off them. And now there are vast sums of money, up to, say, 8 billion. I think it's 40 billion, actually. But in terms of what may be transferred, 40 billion US dollars has been taken from Palestinian workers, and it's in the hands at the minute of the of Israeli kind of state. But in terms of the payment, the union payments that the Palestinians pay, that money has gone to the Histadrut. There's now, under Oslo, been the Oslo Agreement, an arrangement that Histadrut will give 50% of that money to the PGFTU. So the PGFTU is substantially enriched by the money that these kind of unrepresented workers pay whenever they go into Palestine, and they're not represented by the PGFTU. So that's there's a huge area of kind of collaboration there, if you want to use that word, that's going on. This is openly discussed when you go to Palestine between the PGFTU and the Histadrut. And when we met with the leader, one of the leaders of the PGFTU, the General Secretary for the Public Services Sector, he acknowledged this. And we talked about, and we said to him, well, why don't you do what our Unison is calling for and not collaborate with the Histadrut? Why don't we break off relations with them? And he said, well, you know, yeah, we could do that, but it's difficult for them because of the whole money thing. So how would you feel if we made out a call, if we put out a call that you do this? He said, go ahead. You do what you have to do. And he was more or less saying to us, we understand that you have to put out a call like this, you know. But this is maybe a bit complex, but these are contradictions, and I hope Jamal says something a bit more about that. I'm sure my time is well up, right. But I would ask you to go and have a look at these reports. and look at the conclusions in the report, I think that, I mean, I think they're well worth reading. And I mean, I've read them again and again, and all our colleagues who went on the delegations collaborated in writing them. But they're out there, and please have a look at them.